Hello, YouTube Sidekick here with another installment of Su-25, the DCS gateway drug. If this is the first of these videos that you're watching, this is a series about the Su-25 because it's essentially the first aircraft that most people in DCS ever fly. We have been looking both at the Su-25T, which is the aircraft that comes free with DCS when you download it, and also the base model Su-25 that you can pick up pretty cheap or as part of the FC3 series. At any rate, the idea is that Su-25 is pretty accessible from a cost point of view, so it's an aircraft that a lot of people start out on. So the idea of the series was for new players, it's an introduction to the airplane and maybe find out some things that you didn't know, and for people who have been flying DCS for a while, maybe it's a chance to go back and remember what it was like your first time, so to speak. So at any rate, we're in the Su-25T today. We've done a bunch of videos on the Su-25 and the weapons you can use with the Su-25, and if you haven't seen those, you should go back and take a look. And now we're working our way through the Su-25T, and the T model has a lot more options in terms of weapons you can use. Specifically today, though, we're going to go back and look at laser-guided missiles or rockets. We already looked at those in the base model, and I'll remind you that in that video we kind of found that although the rockets themselves were pretty impressive, they weren't really served very well by the sighting system in the Su-25 base model, because it's basically an iron sight, and it's pretty hard to get accurate at the kind of standoff distances that are possible with the rockets. So today we're going to go out with the Su-25T, and it's going to be quite different because it does have a much more sophisticated sighting system, and so I think we're going to get a lot more out of the potential out of these rockets. Okay, so we're just getting down the runway now, getting our speed up to get off the ground. You can tell that we're flying a T model and it's pretty heavily loaded because it does take a while. All right, we're finally up and away. So we're going to take off here, and then we're going to turn to the right, head north of Shkval, where we're taking off from on this clear, crisp morning. We're going to go out to the iron bombing test range, which is a range I like to use for all of these weapons tests with the Su-25. If you go back and look at the earlier videos, you'll see that we've used it several times before. So what we're carrying today is they're all laser-guided rockets, the laser-guided versions of the KH-25 Karen and the KH-29 Kedge. In terms of sizes that you might be more used to, the KH-25s are about the size of a Mark 82 bomb, and the KH-29s are about the size of a Mark 83, so they're pretty sizable. They're bigger, for instance, than a Maverick missile, and I should point out that if you read up on them, the doctrine was that these were not really designed to be for taking out vehicles, which was really the primary role of the Maverick. These are intended more for installations for bunkers and for hardened shelters and that sort of thing. And that's why they're so large. Okay, so we're lining ourselves up on the range. The procedure here usually is to get ourselves lined up and trimmed out and do what I call a trim run right over the range, where we basically execute a shallow dive at full power, and we just try to get the aircraft trimmed so that it's not climbing or diving at those settings, and then that should put us in a good shape when we actually do the attack run. So normally we'd fly over the target if we were dropping bombs, but since we're going to be firing missiles from a bit of a standoff range, I'm going to pull up and go around here before we go around the target, just to make things go a little quicker. So we're going to pull up to the attack altitude somewhere between 3,500 and 4,000 meters, and we're going to go back a few nautical miles so we can give ourselves a chance to run in. So the procedure is going to be, this time, is we're going to turn on the television system, the Shkval, and we're going to use that to identify the target, and then we're going to designate the target with the laser after we've centered the pipper on the television on it. And then we're going to look, and when we have a launch authority light, we're going to launch the missile, and the missile is going to track the laser over the target. So the procedure that we're going to use for the television is we're going to put the television pipper in the middle of the screen, which you can see it there, that circle. And we're going to put it close to the target by rolling in the airplane. Then we're going to ground stabilize it by selecting. And then we're going to move it to where we want it. And when it's over the target, then we're going to turn on the laser. So we're just rolling in here. Get a nice long run. We're going to just use the main target for this first run. And we're close there, so I'm going to stop, and I'm going to zoom in, and I'm just going to move the pipper over the target. Not too worried about where I'm flying right now. And now we can get the laser on, and we just need to wait until the arrow on the left-hand side of the screen crosses that first hash mark. And then we're going to get an LA, and then we're going to fire this. Now, we do have to fly towards the target to make sure that the laser can stay on the target, and the missile can ride it all the way down, and there we go. Well, I got to tell you, that's a pretty satisfying result. Enjoyed that. So let's go around and try it again. So as you can see, that a lot less fiddly, I would say, than trying to designate a target in the base model where you're just using an iron sight. Definitely see why, in effect, I think the T model was basically designed around this target designation system. That's really the difference between the T model and the base model, is all the avionics that are involved in this target designation system, because it really is a big improvement over the base model, and allows the aircraft to get a lot more out of these fairly sophisticated weapons. Alright, so let's just go out here again and have another run. This time maybe we'll pick a vehicle, even though it's a bit of overkill to use an KH-25 on a truck. That's what we have down at the range, so we'll just take a look and just see how that works. So once again, we'll just go out here a ways, come back around. Got our pipper in the middle of the screen there. And we'll just use the same procedure. We roughly line up during a dive, and then we'll switch to manual control of the television target cue, and we'll ground stabilize it, we'll get it over the target, and then we'll turn on the laser. Alright, so we're going to use the first of the triple targets. We're going to use one of the trucks that's sitting around that first triple target, so you can see it down there. It's the set of targets that's to the right in the range. We're getting pretty close. Somewhere around there's probably going to want to roll in. Get up just a little bit more there. That's good there. So, same as usual, we're moving our lift vector to the target, and we're pulling up towards the target. Same procedures we always use when we're deploying weapons. We just need to start looking at the television cursor. Probably pretty good there. We ground stabilize it. Probably going to want to zoom in, find one of those trucks, get it over the truck. That's good. Then we're just going to turn on the laser here. And once the laser's on, we just wait until we're in range. And we launch. And there it goes. A nice slow motion sequence of the launch. And it's going to loft a little bit and come down. It's a pretty fast missile. Gets there pretty quick. And that's all she wrote for that truck. And off we go. But once again, I find that to be a very simple, straightforward way of designating the target and aiming the weapon. And fire from a nice long standoff distance. Even though we have to follow it in to keep the target designated, if we were really interested in keeping our standoff, we could pull away a lot more aggressively. We wouldn't have to get that close to the target. So I think it's a pretty effective weapon when it's used this way. I'm impressed, as I often am. The Su-25 doesn't get a lot of attention, but it really is a great platform for delivering weapons. Now, the T model has some issues in terms of its flight characteristics, but you really can't fault it as a weapons delivery platform, I don't think. So we're going around again. Still got a couple more of the 25s to use up. This time, let's take out a bunker, which is really more what the weapon was designed for, at least if you believe its descriptions in Wikipedia and elsewhere. So we're going to use the same set of 3 targets. This time we're going to take the middle one. The middle of that target actually has a bunker on it. So Same thing, we're just pulling up. We're going to get the TV cursor pretty close to the target. Around there, and then we'll ground stabilize it, and we'll zoom in, get over the center bunker, turn the laser on, clean up our attitude a little bit, and there goes the missile. So when I'm doing this, I like to move the TV cursor down to the middle of the screen. Let's just watch it finish up here. Right through the front door, or back door, I guess. I like to set it with the TV cursor somewhere in the middle of the screen, just so I don't have to dive as much to get the cursor close to the target, but that's really just kind of personal preference. You see when it resets to the top of the symbol there, which I think is pretty close to the actual flight path vector in the SU-25, which means that if you leave it there, you have to basically point the aircraft right at the target. I find it's a little easier if I just aim a little high, so I often just, when I'm getting ready to roll in, I just use the cursor controller and move the target designation circle down below, closer to the horizontal line on the HUD, but that's just a personal preference. Okay, so we got one more 25 to use up. Why don't we take another crack at a vehicle? There's a little vehicle park of M113s in the middle, sort of urban target, and so why don't we use that this time and see what kind of collateral damage we can do to a bunch of closely parked vehicles. That could be kind of fun. Okay, cursor down, and just get ourselves turned around here, pick up the target there. So this time it's that middle mass target, which has got some simulated buildings in it and also a few vehicles. So we'll get that lined up and we'll pull in. Same procedure as usual. Get the lift vector and on the target, pull up until we get the flight path vector or around it, and then we're going to get the television cursor close to it, and we're going to ground it, and we're going to zoom in, and we're going to find the vehicles, which is right there. Pick one of them, and we'll get the laser on, and we still got a little time until we can launch, so we get lots of excellent standoff, and then we get launch authority, and off we go. And the vehicle's going to loft down. We're just going to stay flying fairly high and see what. Nice indeed. Well, you can see the power of that round. We took out 4 M113s with the one rocket, although, bear in mind that they were parked pretty close together, but still that's a pretty substantial amount of damage. So now we're going to pull around, and there we see them. They're still burning down there. Oop, there, we got another one. Now we're going to get out the really big boy, the KH-29s, which, like I said, are almost the equivalent of a 1,000-pound bomb. So that's a pretty substantial warhead to deliver a missile. They're big enough that you can only carry 2 at a time. You have to carry them on the inner pylons. They do come in a television-guided version. We're not using that version today. We will look at that in a future episode. Today we're just looking at the laser-guided version. So the procedure is basically identical to what we just did with the KH-25s. We're going to pick up the target with the television, then we're going to turn on the laser to designate it, then we're going to launch the missile. The one thing we're going to do differently here is try to go out even further, because these guys have a really long standoff range, I think up to about 12 nautical miles, so we need to back out a ways to get the most out of that. So let's, for the first target, let's actually pick another bunker. So the third target in the series of 3 has another bunker in the middle. So again, this is really what the KH-29 was built for, was kind of bunker busting and reinforced concrete structures and that sort of thing. So we'll start there. The same procedure as before. We're just getting the ground stabilized, the cursor. I'm going to move it up to the target. I'm going to zoom in. Going to get it over the bunker. Even this magnification is pretty small at this range. Get the laser on, and we already have launch authority, so away we go. Now, the KH-29 drops a ways before it fires, and then it lofts back up, as you can see. And you can see that we're a long way from that target still, and the missile is on its way. And there we go. And right through the window. And the bunker's dead right away. So that's a pretty substantial explosion. No, not enough to do any damage to the trucks that are sitting around the circle at 25 meters away. Still, lots of standoff, lots of room for us to pull away. Don't even think we got barely below. We only got down to about 2,900 meters. So, higher than 9,000 feet. So that's a pretty impressive weapon. The KH-29 is a bit of a beast. So we got one more of these to play with. So I think this time I'm going to go back out, and this time I'm going to use one of the buildings in that urban target area, just to see what it looks like to use it against a building. Because again, that would be the kind of its typical use would be to be taking out fairly large targets, not really meant for use against vehicles. We'll look at the Vicar in a later version, which is much more the anti-vehicle weapon that was designed for use both in Russian helicopters and also for use with the Su-25T. So here we are, we're a ways back. We're just turning ourselves in. Now, one thing to note is when you're firing these one at a time, you do need to retrim the aircraft because it is a pretty substantial weight, even on the inner pylon like that. It does affect the handling of the aircraft. Okay, we're rolling in for our last target around here. We're going to go after that urban target area again. We'll just pick a building. So same procedure. We'll get ourselves mostly rolled out. Get the cursor about where we want it, and then we're going to ground stabilize it with a press, and we're going to zoom in, and we're just going to pick, back onto the target. We're going to pick one of those buildings. That's the thing we want to aim at. Get ourselves lined up, get the laser on, clean up our attitude a little bit. We got launch authority, and there goes the rocket. And as you can see, it's a pretty fast rocket as well. And then we just need to keep flying more or less towards the target, keep the laser on it. And shack. Very impressive explosion. All right, well, that I really enjoyed that. That was very satisfying. As I said before, the 25T proves to be a very stable platform. The weapons sighting and target selection and everything I think is very straightforward, very easy to use, and the weapons are very effective and at fairly significant ranges. So all in all, that's really a good time. Not sure you can ask much more than that for a day at the range. So I enjoyed flying it. I hope you guys enjoyed watching it. So if you're new to DCS, hopefully that gives you some ideas of things to try. And if it's been a while since you flew the Su-25T, maybe it's time you went back and gave the old girl a shot. She certainly can be a lot of fun on a date, that's for sure. At any rate, if you're enjoying these videos, please do subscribe to the channel. It helps me keep making more of them. But for now, this is going to be Sidekick, signing off.